This is, without a doubt, one of the most chilling execution cases in the history of the United States. It's the story of a woman who spent less than 2 years on death row before being executed by lethal injection in Arkansas. Christina Marie Riggs. She did something so disturbing, so unforgivable, that the jury didn't hesitate, the state didn't hesitate, and she herself could never forgive it. But before reaching her final moments, we need to go back to the decision that sealed her fate. The case you're about to hear contains sensitive and distressing details. Viewer discretion is advised. All events have been presented with care and respect for the victims. On November 4th, 1997, Christina Marie Riggs walked out of Arkansas Heart Hospital for the last time. To many of her co-workers, she was seen as one of the hospital's most dedicated nurses, kind, reliable, and professional. But that afternoon was different. This time, Christina didn't plan on coming back. In her mind, she had already made a decision to end her life and her children's. She left the hospital with her pockets full of stolen medications, morphine, potassium chloride, and a bottle of Elavil. But these drugs weren't meant for her patients. They were meant for something far darker. Christina was the mother of 2 children. As usual, she went to pick them up from her mother's house, Carol, who took care of them while Christina was at work. But that afternoon, Carol noticed something different, a strange feeling, like a premonition that something bad was about to happen. She asked if everything was okay. Christina said yes, handed her the money she owed, and left with the kids. Once home, she fed them, played with them, and went through her usual routine. That night, in her small apartment in Sherwood, Christina tucked in her children, Justin, 5 years old, and Shelby, almost 2. She kissed their foreheads, adjusted their blankets, and hugged them tenderly. The children smiled, happy to see their mother so affectionate, unaware of what was about to happen. Because that night wasn't just bedtime, it was the beginning of a countdown to death. Around 10 o'clock, Christina told Justin he could have a candy as a reward. Without knowing it, the boy and his sister ingested lethal doses of Elavil, a powerful antidepressant, enough to render them unconscious. Then Christina stood silently beside their beds, watching them sleep, waiting for the pills to take effect. Justin was the first. Christina filled a syringe and injected potassium chloride directly into his veins, the same compound used in executions, but she hadn't diluted it properly. The boy's body reacted instantly. He woke up confused, screaming and crying. His chest convulsed. His nerves seemed to burn from the inside. He didn't understand what was happening. Christina panicked. She tried to fix it by giving him morphine, hoping it would calm him down, but it didn't work. Then she took a pillow and pressed it against his face. Justin fought, kicked, scratched, crying out in desperation, "Mom, no, Mom!" But Christina didn't stop. Eventually, his small body went still. Then she turned to Shelby. This time, she couldn't bring herself to use the needle again, not after seeing what she had done to Justin. Instead, she smothered her. Shelby, still under the effects of Elavil, barely reacted. She was too little to understand what was happening, and within seconds, she was gone. When it was over, Christina carried her children's bodies to her bed. She placed them side by side, tucked them in carefully, as if she were simply putting them to sleep. Then she sat down to write 3 farewell letters, one to her mother, one to her sister, and one to her ex-husband. In the letter to her mother, she explained that she feared her children, who had different fathers, would be separated after her death. She also wrote that she didn't want them to grow up knowing she had taken her own life. Then Christina swallowed a massive dose of 28 Elavil pills, injected potassium chloride directly into her body, and collapsed to the floor beside the bed, next to the children she had just put to rest forever. It was supposed to end there, but it didn't.
The amitriptyline, I figured, would help them sleep, so they wouldn't wake up and feel nothing. And the potassium chloride was supposed to stop their heart. No pain, no nothing, just... I don't think he knew. I think that the amitriptyline, he just kind of, whined, Mama, Mama. After I let Justin get in the bed, in my bed, I used the pillow and suffocated.
The next day, November 5th, her mother, Carol, began to worry. She hadn't heard from Christina and couldn't shake the feeling that something was wrong. Around 4 p.m., she entered the apartment and froze. What she saw shattered her. Her grandchildren were dead, and Christina, barely alive, lay on the floor, unconscious but still breathing.
Carol immediately called 911 and paramedics arrived within minutes. Christina was fading fast, but they acted quickly, loaded her into the ambulance and rushed her to Baptist Memorial Hospital. By 5:30, doctors had pumped her stomach and stabilized her. She survived, but the damage was already done. Back at the apartment, detectives began to piece everything together. They found syringes, traces of morphine, potassium chloride, and an empty bottle of Eliv. And they also found the letters. One by one, the puzzle started to make sense. They immediately contacted the hospital with a clear order: no visitors. Christina was not to see or speak to anyone, not even her own family. But her family didn't stay idle. Shortly after midnight, they hired an attorney to protect her, and he wasted no time. He called the police directly and instructed them not to question Christina unless he was present. But the police ignored him. The next morning, November 6th, detectives entered the hospital room. They read her rights, turned on the recorder, and began asking questions. And in less than 8 minutes, Christina confessed. She told them everything: how she'd tried to end all of their lives, how she saw Justin scream in pain, how she pressed a pillow over his face to finish what she had started, how she moved the bodies onto her bed, hoping they would all die together. She said she never warned anyone because she didn't think anyone could understand. By the end of that same day, Christina was booked into the Pulaski County Jail and charged with 2 counts of capital murder. And when she finally stood before the judge, she didn't try to hide what she'd done. Yet, she still pleaded not guilty by reason of mental disease or defect. But the damage was done. Her confession was on tape, in her own voice. The letters were in her handwriting, and the apartment she left behind spoke for itself. It was a place where 2 children went to bed believing they were safe and never opened their eyes again.
And the kids became a part of it. But I was sitting there thinking, well, who's going to take care of the kids when I'm gone? Because up until this point, all I ever heard, just my son had ADHD, and people who would take care of him were always like, he's a handful, he wears me out, he does this, he does that, da-da-da-da-da-da-da-da. I get calls from the daycare. Mom was keeping them in the evening times, and she was always just so exhausted. And so in my mind, nobody wanted them.
From the moment Christina was arrested, investigators began digging into her life, searching for answers, looking for the moment everything changed. But what they found didn't make things clearer, only heavier. Christina Marie Riggs was born in Lawton, Oklahoma, and grew up in Oklahoma City, but growing up doesn't always mean being loved. Behind the front door, things happened that no child should ever face alone. Later, she told investigators she'd been sexually abused by a relative, and by age 14, she was numbing the pain with cigarettes, alcohol, and marijuana. At 16, she became pregnant for the first time. She carried the baby to term, but gave it up for adoption, a decision she rarely spoke of afterward. But she tried to move on. She went back to high school, earned a license as a practical nurse, and for a while, her life seemed stable. She spent her early 20s doing home care work before landing a job at a veterans hospital. On paper, she looked like someone rebuilding her life. She was good at her job, but inside, something was starting to break. In 1991, Christina became pregnant again, this time with a boy she named Justin Thomas. The father had disappeared before she even knew she was pregnant, but shortly before Justin was born in June 1992, she started dating a man named John Riggs, and they married the following year. In December 1994, they had a daughter, Shelby Alexis, and in 1995, they moved to Sherwood, Arkansas, where Christina's mother lived. There, she got a new job at Baptist Hospital, and on paper, it looked like a fresh start, but the cracks began to show quickly. Christina claimed that John was abusive toward Justin, that she once saw him punch the boy in the stomach. That moment was the breaking point, she said, and she ended the marriage soon after. From then on, she was on her own, raising 2 children, working long shifts at the hospital, with no real help. To most people, she seemed like a tired but responsible single mother, just trying to hold it all together. But inside, she was falling apart. And in November 1997, everything exploded.
At her trial in 1998, Christina didn't ask for mercy. She didn't claim innocence. Instead, she said she had lost her mind. Her attorneys argued she wasn't guilty by reason of insanity, that years of depression had hollowed her out, and that the trauma of working as a nurse near the Oklahoma City bombing site had shattered what was left of her. Doctors who testified on her behalf said she suffered from severe depression caused by childhood sexual abuse, failed relationships, financial struggles, and low self-esteem related to her weight.
She was depressed, she was this, she was that. Doesn't make up for the fact that I took 2 innocent people's lives that were my babies.
But prosecutors saw it differently.
They said this wasn't about pain or illness. They said Christina had become bitter and saw her children as a burden. They accused her of locking them in their room while she went out drinking and singing karaoke, of calmly planning their murders, and that what she did wasn't the result of mental illness, but a choice. They painted her as a cold-blooded killer for whom her children had become an inconvenience. It didn't take the jury long to decide which story they believed. Christina Riggs was found guilty on all counts. Then came sentencing. Her defense team tried to fight for her life, but Christina wouldn't let them. She didn't want help. She didn't want to negotiate. She stood in court and said exactly what she wanted: to die. I want to die. I want to be with my babies. I want the death penalty. And she meant it. She gave up every appeal, one after another, until nothing stood in the way of her execution. Christina was transferred to the McPherson unit, home to Arkansas's female death row. There she waited in a small cell as her execution date drew closer. And when the day finally came, she was moved to the Cummins unit, where executions are carried out. She didn't resist. She didn't ask for a delay. Christina wanted to die, and in the end, the state granted her wish. On her final day alive, Christina received no visitors, though she was allowed to. 12 hours before her execution, she was offered her last meal. She chose a supreme pizza with salad, pickled okra, strawberry shortcake, and cherry lemonade. On May 2nd, 2000, the execution process began. Christina was brought into the death chamber at the Cummins unit around 8:40 p.m. The procedure took nearly 15 minutes, during which Christina remained conscious, calm, and silent. Christina became the first woman executed in Arkansas since 1845, and to this day, she remains the youngest woman executed in modern U.S. history. She was pronounced dead at 9:28 p.m. Christina Marie Riggs was 28 years old. What do you think? Was justice truly served in the case of Christina Marie Riggs? Some believe she acted under an undiagnosed postpartum depression. Others say there's simply no excuse for what she did. Let me know your thoughts in the comments.